What are some of the most epic ways you have seen people quit their jobs? I quit in an epic way. I had been at the company for over 4 years and had been written up twice for giving smart-ass remarks to people in another department over the years. There was one guy I hated. I would type out why, but for the sake of convenience, just know he was an idiot. This guy worked on the main office floor, so he didn't have a private office. But he did keep a name tag on his desk. Call him Tim Doe. I knew I was going to quite about 4 months beforehand, and 2 guys knew I was leaving. I promised these guys that I would get Tim Doe to flip out before I left, and I did it by simply flipping his name tag the opposite direction. I didn't vandalize it, steal it, or even move it to the left or right. I just rotated it. At first, I only did it once or twice a day for about a month. By the last 3 weeks, I was rotating it 5, 6, and even 7 times a day. The people that sat near him knew it was me, but they hated the guy, so they kept their mouths shut. He was so annoyed that he set up a camera and it would have caught me, but his coworker that sat next to him let me know via GChat. So, I left my office, crawled on my belly behind his desk and rotated it. But what can he do? Complain to HR. Hey, HR, someone keeps rotating my name tag. No, he'll get laughed out of the office. He never lost his crap, but he was so annoyed he offered $100 to the person who sat next to him. If she told him who was doing it, she didn't. The day before my last day, I stepped it up a notch. I took a piece of paper, wrote John Doe on it, and the scotch taped it to his name tag. Didn't hurt it. The next morning I walk in and his hood is up. There's a note up that I couldn't read, and he was red in the face. He thought it was me. Couldn't prove it. At this point, my VP&A director at the company knew I was leaving, but they asked I would stay another 2 days to get things wrapped up. However, my last day, HR called me into an office and said they reviewed security cams and say that the guy rotating the sign was me. The HR lady, who hated me, smiled and said, "That was your last strike. We're going to have to let you go." I handed her my official resignation letter, smiled, and told her that it was already my last day. It was awesome. Story 2. I was a music major. The plan was to become the next Danny Elfman, or alternatively, a big shot grunge music rock star. Obviously, that didn't pan out, so I had to get a real job. My first fancy pants office job was in a call center, making outbound market research phone calls. I called it bosses by day, housewives by night. It was a new office and all the managers were from the other side of the country. They were only there temporarily. They selected the best staff and promoted us. I was now a monitor. My job was to essentially eavesdrop on phone calls while watching a mirror session of their computer screen, then provide feedback. It sucked. It became pretty obvious to me that the company was corrupt. Sometimes a staff person was disliked by a manager. "Find us a good reason to let them go," they'd say to me. Other times, we ran out of sample or pre-screened contact information. So I would Xerox copies of the yellow pages and hand them out to staff. After blacking out the "do not Xerox this and use it to cold call people" under severe penalty of FCC law disclaimer on every page. We had a growing list of IT directors across the country who we kept calling. These people were perturbed and had told us, "Don't call me again or I'll sue you." So we just kept these names on a list, a manually maintained hard copy list. But a bright light of hope was right around the corner. IBM had selected our company as the vendor for a long-term global IT survey. Hope and good fortune awaited our corrupt leaders. Well, not on my watch, because I was bored. I would play with the phones while monitoring staff. I discovered that if you unscrewed the cover to the mouthpiece, there was a speaker/microphone thing with a big magnet on the back. This magnet connected to 2 prongs. If you placed an alcohol wipe between the 2 prongs and the magnet, the phone would continue to function. You could dial, the call would connect, you could hear the other caller, but they couldn't hear you. It was a forced hardware-driven mute. I tested this on a cracked-out raver girl who had recently started working for us. Because she was a dumb raver, she made multiple attempts with long panicked pauses in between. Great test. Poor girl must have been sweating so hard. I accepted a new job in a better town for more money. I was out. I was done. The time was too right. It was time to execute. I spent the better part of a week running a simple exploit on the poorly designed network with my awesome credentials. Rather than logging in from my own network, I logged into corporate headquarters. Rather than logging in as a monitor, I logged into the interviewer session. Rather than using my own credentials, I used a particularly bothersome senior manager. This wasn't particularly difficult. From then, I simply pretended to be interviewing. I selected the "this person is not the right person, but they gave us good contact info for the right person" option. I entered phone numbers from the "don't call these people because they'll sue us" list. Then I entered fake names, inspired by Bart Simpson, Mike Hunt, Hugh Jazz, Harry Cockring, Joe Mumma, and so on. I scheduled appointments for us to contact these people in 2 to 3 weeks. I did this hundreds of times. I then volunteered to work late on a Sunday. I'll close up the office, guys. You go home. I got this. I had a dodgy map of the cubicles. We had just installed a brand new fancy pants auto dialing phone system. Too perfect. I did my hardware trick on phones in a manner that looked somewhat patterned but somewhat random. Plus all the backup spare phone. Somewhere between 1/3 to 1/2 had a forced hardware mute. I had the perfect alibi. I was getting married. I skipped the next Monday, then the next Tuesday. I called my boss on Wednesday to tell him that I'd found a new job, and I was giving my 2 weeks notice. I needed to take the rest of the week to plan for the wedding. And of course, next week was my honeymoon. He was perturbed. You're calling me to give your 2 weeks notice. 2 days late after skipping 2 days, and you're telling me you won't be here the last 2 weeks. Well, yeah. Can you think of one good reason I shouldn't fire you right now? Because you'd have to call corporate headquarters and ask them to ship you a check to me today. Say, okay, fine. That was the last time I ever spoke to him. I saw a coworker a few weeks later. Hey, how are things? I asked her. Oh, it's real bad. The phone network stopped working as soon as they installed it. Not every phone, but a lot of them. They couldn't figure it out. They had technicians in the back room for days. They even tried reinstalling it, but it isn't working. Oh, and we're getting sued. A bunch of people who told us not to call them said, we're harassing them. IBM is pulling out of the contract. Probably not exactly what you were looking for, OP, but I deliberately used technical exploits to sabotage a corporation with 12 offices in 7 states. I personally bankrupted them. I'd like to say I did it for noble reason. They were a bad company. But the truth is, I did it for the same reason great men climb great mountains. I did it because it was there. Story 3. Not exactly epic, but I got a lot of satisfaction out of quitting my job at the nursing home. I was a chef for 4 years. In the last year I was there, we got a new manager. Prior to this manager, in 3 years I'd called off once, was late twice. Once because of a car accident on my way to work, and once because I overslept for a 6 a.m. shift. I had never been written up before. I was on great terms with my coworkers and really enjoyed my job. This new manager comes in and at first he's friendly, but he found out I was gay and decided he hated me. He was a very devout Catholic. This dude would follow me around all of my shift and tell me inappropriate details of his life. This includes how devout he is, how much he hated certain groups of people, his sex life with a woman emphasized, how many friends he has, what his childhood was like, etc. If I told him to stop, I was written up. If I said anything at all, I was written up. If I was silent, I was written up. Anytime I went to HR over the obvious harassment, I was told to suck it up. Well, at the time, I was not out of the closet. This manager and whoever he found out from outed me to the company. This made life difficult. It was a Methodist retirement home and wasn't keen on homosexuality. Anytime I brought up a complaint against this manager, I was pushed to the wayside, and suddenly, my word and good reputation was meaningless. At this time, I left college and needed a full-time job. I bid for the full-time chef's job. This manager sabotaged it, as he did with every full-time bid I placed. I tried to transfer out of the kitchen and go full-time at housekeeping, and he changed a write-up slip for back-talking. Him aka telling him to stop involving me in his personal life to a hostility write-up. He gloated to me about how I'd never leave the kitchen because of it. So I started looking for other jobs. During my job hunt, I found an amazing job opportunity. High-paying, good pace, benefits, and a fresh start. I originally loved my old job, though, and didn't want to leave because I was young and dumb. So I put a final bid for full-time chef after the 2 they hired quit. But I also accepted the other job offer, knowing this manager would be crap and sabotage my bid. The next day, I'm hauled into HR. This manager smugly telling me, my job here is over. I sat quietly while my boss and the HR guy gave some BS paperwork about an alleged major duck-up. I pointed out I didn't work that day. They made excuse after excuse why it was my fault. HR rep tells me he's so sorry to have to let me go. Expecting me to be upset? They all sit there with giant smiles. I shook his hand and politely asked if he still needed my 2 weeks' notice, as I had been job hunting and accepted another offer for better pay. His face kind of froze, and my manager looks ducking pissed. I went on to thank him and my boss for the 4 years I spent and explained that I enjoyed my time there. I bid for the full-time position because I spent 4 years there and had a semblance of loyalty to them, and would have chosen it over this other job offer, but that I was absolutely thrilled to be free to take the other offer. My boss's face was beet red. The HR rep seemed thoroughly confused, and my manager was ducking livid. I shook my boss's hand and thanked her for her time. I turned to the manager and politely informed him that I have the paperwork proving he lied about his allegations about me on several occasions, and I had proof of him tampering with my time clock. I had documented my missing wages and had proof of him erasing hours I had worked in addition to demanding I work overtime off the clock. I was turning him into the labor board, and I wished him well. I was so polite it made me sick, but I turned him in. Got a 2-week vacation. The labor board investigated and found a slew of evidence of this guy stealing wages from not just me, but other employees. We were all reimbursed our lost wages. I started my new job and I'm still here. I love it and couldn't be happier. He, on the other hand, was fired, and last I knew was working at a deli counter. Story 4. Actually, I quit my job pretty epically. I worked at Baskin-Robbins in high school, and the manager was a ruthless Karen. She called us employees stupid, retarded, and other phrases like too slow to even scoop ice cream. It was awful. The workplace was horrible in general. So many hazards, especially in the freezer. We were allowed to throw away expired ice cream because it was a waste of product and money. I could go on and on. I couldn't do it for moral reasons anymore. So I walked up to her one night and said, I called OSHA on this place and told every customer that's come in since I've worked here that you sell them expired ice cream. Good riddance. She stormed off to call someone, so I walked into the freezer and took a tub of my favorite ice cream and left. We weren't allowed to throw away the expired ice cream. Sorry about that, guys, but my coworker and I tried pressing charges after we quit. We kept telling the people that went there what she did. In the long run, we just weren't that experienced in legal issues, which I feel like is why she only hired high schoolers. I don't live in the city anymore because of college. But if I go back and I can get over the bad memories, I want to go in there and see if anything has changed. Also, she was the manager and the owner of that specific Baskin-Robbins. It made things more complicated legally. Story 5. That JetBlue guy who years ago got fed up with a rude passenger made a quit speech on the intercom, grabbed a beer in each hand, and then deployed the emergency slide and weed out of there. Story 6. Used to work at Comcast, boo hiss, and I had aspirations to move up in the company. I was pretty green to the corporate world, so I thought that helping my supervisor with her job would help move me up. And by help, I mean my supervisor made me do her entire job. I ran her meetings, did scheduling, went through her paperwork, etc. all while she sat at her desk playing Candy Crush on her iPad. I did all this while working on the phone. I did this for months until one day I snapped on a customer. Now, I take full responsibility for what I did, but that wasn't good enough for her. Nope. She had to sit me down and humiliate me in front of the upper management. For an hour and a half, she made me listen to a recording of my entire duck-up while pausing it every few minutes to say something like, "How could you?" I was in tears at the end, and she just used that to show how bad of an employee I am and how good a boss she is for helping me learn from my mistakes. She then pushed for me to receive a final notice. If I went out of line one more time for a year, I'd lose my job. She wasn't going to fire me. I was going to do that for her. HR was predictably useless, as were my friends in management. Now that I'd gone from being an up-and-coming star to a pariah, people didn't give a crap about me, except my supervisor, who still expected me to do her ducking job. My next few days were filled with a considerable amount of crying. What followed was rage, endless white-hot rage. I didn't quit. I didn't give up. Instead, I decided to best revenge with success. I went back to school to finish my degree. After a while, I was offered an internship, which I took. While I was fighting an uphill battle at Comcast 40 hours a week, I was at an internship 20 hours a week while being a full-time student. And I let my supervisor know this. Sorry, boss, I'd say, I can't do this report for you. I have a final to study for. Want me to stay late? No can do. My internship is working me hard, so I want to spend my night off at home doing nothing. This went on for that year I was on probation. And during that time, I always kept my sales numbers low. Not low enough to get fired, but just at the point where people could see I wasn't trying. This affected my commission, but it was so worth it. Why? 3 months before my probation was over, I switched to another supervisor. Those last 3 months upped my effort, and my sales figures skyrocketed. Within my first month, my new supervisor saw my numbers double. I had intentionally undercut my commission to make her look bad. The upper management saw how my new supervisor succeeded in 1 month, where my older supervisor failed in 9, and it pleased me to no end that I aided her, like how she humiliated me. On the 1-year anniversary of my probation, I put in my 2-week notice. In my exit interview, I let them know what I did with my life. I omitted the undercutting part, and that I spent the last year becoming a better person just to spite Comcast, and that I waited to quit until after my probation was over. It was glorious. Story 7. My 18-year-old cousin passed. My boss made me come into work the day we buried him. After I put my cousin in the ground and showed up for work, she lectured me on being a team player and having priorities that are more important than a funeral. I told her to go duck herself and walked out. Story 8. This isn't really all that dramatic or scandalous, but it made me really, really happy. I was temping in an office with several HR departments working for different staffing groups. The whole place was a ridiculous shambles. Nobody ever got fired there, so there were a lot of semi-elderly staff who just refused to learn anything more than the very basics of how to use a computer. It took weeks to get anything done. There were maybe 3 members of staff who were competent, efficient, and driven. and they pretty much carried the other 20-odd staff and kept the place running. This story is about one of those staff members. Let's call her Pamela. Pamela was in her mid-30s, incredibly hardworking, and always managed to be cheerful and pragmatic. She managed to keep things rolling and stay positive in circumstances that would have caused me to snap and murder someone. She was a single mother with a couple of kids in their early teens, and she did a pretty amazing job of juggling all the stuff that she had to make happen in work and in her home life. But you could see sometimes late in the day that she was tired. She'd never give up, never give in, but you could see that she was pretty worn down sometimes. I didn't know her all that well, different department, but everyone knew Pamela because she was one of the only people you could rely on to do the things she'd said she would do, and she knew everything and everyone. One morning, she came in looking stunning. She'd had her hair done and was wearing a new suit that looked really nicely cut. Most people in the office kind of slumped around in jeans and t-shirts or pants and a cardigan over something floral. Pamela looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine by comparison. For the next couple of weeks, she really did look like a new woman, and then she was gone. I didn't see her for a couple of days, and when I asked someone else, they said she'd left. She'd had a bit of a win on the lottery. A few £1,000s, not earth-shaking, but it turns out that it was just the right amount for Pamela to see an opportunity and run with it. She'd paid off some debts, gotten her knackered car fixed up, overhauled her wardrobe, and now that she wasn't always so close to tipping into the red, started looking at what she actually wanted to be doing. So apparently she overhauled her wardrobe, discovered a whole reservoir of newfound confidence and drive, and just started applying for other jobs in other sectors. Anything she liked the look of, she was applying for. And she landed something that paid significantly better money than she was getting at our office, and a job with much better prospects and far less useless colleagues, I'd imagine. And that was that. We never saw Pamela again, and I'm ducking delighted for her. All she needed was just a little bit of luck. Just that one chance to climb out of the hole she was in and run for the hills. Story 9. One of my old managers at the coffee shop I work at literally threw his hands up in the middle of his shift, said something along the lines of, "Duck this," and walked out. We never saw him again. Story 10. Not an amazing quit, but I did it at my last job. The manager treated me like crap and was out to get me. She wrote me up for days I had off, and for a day I had to leave early to say goodbye to a dying uncle. I even got frozen in for over 24 hours on shift with no break. She called 10 minutes. After my coworker, who worked only 6 hours, had left. She lied about a lot of crap too, and all the staff knew it. I went to work on a Friday like normal and got fed up over more BS. I made up a lie about a family emergency and left. I called her later and said I wasn't coming in for the second half of my shift due to the emergency lie, and just did my own fun stuff to try and relax from the BS environment. Monday rolled around and I drove pretty much all the way to my job. I decided I had enough and didn't need the stress. Hours of crying after work and the constant lies during work hours wasn't worth it. I just turned around and went home. I ignored 2 phone calls that occurred 6 hours after my shift started. At night, I had a higher manager call to tell me I was being let go because I did a no-show for 3 shifts, a lie because I called them and said I wasn't going back on Friday. I just said okay and hung up on her. I kind of feel bad because my coworkers were awesome, and I miss them, but meh. The BS wasn't worth anything I was offered. I had medical issues that stemmed from work. They denied it even though a nurse said it was from work. That disappeared literally 3 days after I quit. I couldn't be happier. My stress is gone, and I'm actually in a job that I enjoy. Maybe I didn't handle it well, but it was all I could do while I was feeling so run down and want to pass. I was tired of wanting to drive my car into a tree to avoid going to work. It's been almost a year since I quit there and haven't looked back. My family still doesn't know what really happened that day, and I don't plan on telling them. They wanted me to stick it out until I found my other job. Story 11. Last time I left a job, I wrote my resignation on a company computer, sent it to the printer in my boss's office, and called his extension. "Hey, look in your printer." I actually had a good relationship with that boss. He just responded, "What, you're too duckin' lazy to walk to my office?" We had a good laugh. Story 12. A housekeeper at a really nice hotel in my city invited his friends from the marching band to help him make his grand exit, mid-shift. The parade route went by the manager's office, out the lobby, and down the road to the bar. Story 13. College service worker. They pulled me aside 3 days in a row and told me I had to keep making more pizzas. I was hired as a sandwich guy, but because even a monkey could do it, I also covered the other asshat when he'd leave work early without putting pizzas out and wash dishes because a dishy quit. After my day off, I came back in with the mindset that today would mark some kind of change. Either I was going to stop making pizzas or quit. The look on my supervisor's face when I told that old bat I didn't have a special pizza for the day because I wasn't going to make the pizza. An hour later, I'm going over the details of my contract with her and the head supervisor. After their 5 minutes of bullcrafting, I simply said, "I'm not making pizzas," and they said, "Fine, then you'll have to leave." I asked how they'd like me to resign, and they looked around and handed me a piece of printer paper. Being a college-educated smartass, I began to write out about a paragraph of Sarcastic, I, Whitey the casual, resigned from my position of food service worker, blah, blah, blah. I made sure to sign my name at the bottom of the page, complete with the sign here X, for complete legal immersion. As I walked out, I shouted to one coworker to keep being cool, and to another one that's I'd be back to give him his ride home, same neighborhood, that I promised him earlier that morning. 5 minutes later, I'm back at my old summer prep cook job on the clock because someone had just called out. After my shift there, I made sure to give coworker/neighbor his ride home and to hear the aftermath. Nothing really juicy, but man, did he sure love me for the way I stood up to the supervisor. 5 minutes, no joke though, between clocking out and in at the other job. Story 14, I was a server and had the most disrespectful and outright rude table I have ever seen or heard of. Drunk, mean, and frequently making personal verbal attacks. I dumped a pitcher of water on the a-hole that was up from his table, coming toward me and telling me off in front of the whole restaurant. Then I told my boss what happened and that I was done. He saw how the table was acting, so he apologized, gave me a hug, and told me he'd give me a good reference for my next job. This was 8 years ago, and I still get congratulated by coworkers when I'm in town and run into them. I've met many people that worked there after I left and know the story well. I get a lot of free drinks in the server community in that town. Story 15. Main boss was on vacation, so her assistant was in charge and on a power trip. Nearly everyone coincidentally ended up coming down with an illness or car troubles. So during one of the shifts, it's just her and this one guy because everyone else for that shift has called out and me, but I was technically in a different department and the assistant had no authority there. He wanted to take a lunch, but she was claiming they were too busy and he'd have to wait until the end of his shift when the next shift showed up. He wasn't okay with that and told her she needed to make room in the schedule for him to go at a reasonable time. She refused, so he went anyway. Told her, see ya, took all his stuff, walked to a nearby deli, ordered a sandwich, walked back, sat himself in front of the giant window that faces the parking lot and ate it in full view as he waited for his ride to pick him up. I should also mention he was staring at the window the whole time, just daring her to come out and say something. I guess it's not all that badass, but she was furious, and it was pretty damn funny. She came over to me and was yelling about him, but she really couldn't do anything about it, but curse and rant. Story 16. Min told a guy I worked with that I'd quit with him. On the day he put in his 2 weeks notice, and on the way back into the shop, I told the owner I was leaving in 2 weeks. He had a hot temper and fired me on the spot. I just ended up with 2 weeks vacation before the start of the new job. Story 17, I working minimum wage in a bowling alley as a kids party host. I was hosting 4 parties simultaneously due to staff shortages, which meant I was running around like a blue-arsed fly. One mom from one of the parties complained I wasn't spending enough time with her kids. I apologized and spent more time with her kids. They got face painting, magic, the full works, stuff that parties never usually get. She then complained that I was spending too much time with the kids and they weren't bowling quick enough. I lay off again and I think things are okay until the end of the party. Mom speaks to the manager and complains. Without speaking to me, the manager apologizes and gives the customer a full refund of 300 pounds. They were a biggish party, 20 kids. The manager then pulls me into a side office and tells me that it's coming out of my wages. I'm on 4 pounds an hour. That's pretty much 2 weeks' pay. I say that it's unfair, but my boss doesn't relent. So I told him that I had 4 parties on, 50 kids, and it was due to his poor staffing. I then told him to stick his job up his arse. This was huge for me. At 18, I then walked out of an alarmed fire exit, which set off the fire alarm, causing the building to be evacuated, and it was pouring with rain. I walked home really upset. And when I got in, my mom told me that my boss had tried calling me multiple times asking for me to come back and reconsider, as they had more parties scheduled and no staff. I ignored his calls. Story 18. Worked with a guy, let's call him Jake. He wrote with a Sharpie on a piece of cardboard, "Me, Jake, quit." He gave it to our manager and just stopped showing up. One day, my manager showed me that he still has that cardboard, and it's just in a file cabinet. I guess he has to keep it for proof of him quitting or something like that. Story 19, worked at a crafty family dine-in place named Applebee's when I was around 18. Boss was a grade A-hole, sat at the bar and did piss all every ducking day. Meanwhile, we were always understaffed. Friday night, you were lucky to have 3 servers plus me as a host. Well, one Friday, the whole damn place was packed for the dinner rush and I'm about to collapse. I've got people out the door, around 10 families needing to be fed. The phone's ringing off the hook. Tables need to be bussed, food needs to be rubbed. All of my menus are disappearing. The list goes on. And I'm doing the best I can, mind you. But that day had marked 2 weeks since my last day off and I'd been there since open. So while the whole place is going to hell, what's Mr. Boss doing? He's at the bar, sipping a Ducking Miller. I go up to him, ask him to cover for me. I just need to take a moment to cool off, throw some ice in a bag and hold it to my head. That's literally all I ask. 5 minutes. and I'd be back to work. Well, Anand, this is a demanding job. If you can't handle the workload, maybe you shouldn't be working here. I was silent for a moment. Then I nodded. I smiled. I was a lot calmer than I thought I'd be. I removed my badge and set it on the bar. I wished him good luck, and I walked out. The place was still packed, most of the tables needed to be cleared, and there was still a line out the door. But I didn't care. Duck Applebee. Story 20. Our regional manager almost crap his pants when he found out that our store manager was using hospital-grade cleaning products to clean our store, such as hospital-grade soap, disinfectant, etc. Our storage room literally looked like a hospital supply closet. However, she had a serious case of OCD and even enforced a policy that she came up with, which said that we had to bake products with a face mask on. Every 30 minutes, the store had to be completely cleaned and disinfected and wear gloves everywhere in the store, including the register, bathroom, etc. Obviously, our health inspection was a 100, but the cost of the cleaning supplies was out of our budget. Not only that, she hired a nightly cleaning crew to deep clean every night behind our usual cleaning checklist at the end of the night. Long story short, he fired her for misuse of corporate funds and told her to get her OCD ass up out of here. She left, but the next day, which happened to be our busiest day of the year, the day after Christmas, we discovered that the locks were all changed and the code to the safe changed. After 5 hours of trying to break the safe open, all of the money was gone. We keep $3,000 in cash. Corporate was chill about it because they said all they had to do was take it out of her salary for the month. Story 21. Got pissed at the Karen of Burger King manager, took off the uniform, shirt, pants, hat, tossed them in the dishwater, and walked through the busy lobby and out the front door with nothing on but underwear and a middle finger in the air. Story 22. While she'd never admit it, a girl I worked with at a print shop was under performance management because she was kind of a slacker, didn't show up for shifts, was kind of rude to her colleagues, etc. She wasn't that bad a person, just kind of crafty to work with. So one day she's in a meeting with the store manager and someone from the corporate team, presumably HR. We didn't have our own HR rep. I have to deduce a lot of this from context because I didn't hear it, but I guess she didn't like how the meeting was going because she walked out of the meeting and downstairs to the shop floor. The manager was hurrying after her and trying to speak to her quietly. I'm going to assume that she was being let go, but they were going to give her a notice period, like let her finish out 2 weeks or something. Instead, she turned on him and said, "No, I don't have to, because I quit." Then she started doing this giddy dance, like rocking her hips and waggling her feet one at a time, pointing her fingers up at the ceiling in this sassy way, singing, "I quit, I quit, I quit." After a few seconds of this, she climbs up on the counter, no small effort as she was wearing chunky ankle boots and a long, somewhat constrictive skirt, where she continued her song and dance, threw off her company-branded shirt. She had a singlet on, and also no boobs whatsoever, so this wasn't as thrilling as you'd hope, hopped down, grabbed her bag from her pigeonhole, and left. Story 23. Used to work with a guy named Hugo. Sweet, honest, polite, 20-year-old kid. Not a bad bone in his body. Hardly ever swore. Always worked hard, and never took bathroom breaks. Everyone in the workplace's favorite employee. He literally knocked 2 teeth out and left a few hanging from our boss, Ernesto's mouth. Ernesto had always been an hole, but he took it to a whole new level. Hugo missed a day of work. He called in advance, and as far as I know, he only ever missed that one time. Next day, we all ask him what happened. I know, coworker stuff. He instantly tears up and tells us his 12-year-old dog died, and he felt he wasn't going to be able to work properly if he came in. Ernesto and some other hole immediately start laughing their asses off, asking when the wake and funeral will be. Hugo took it all for like half the day, all in silence. About 5 hours in, the boss is still dropping by every 5 minutes just to laugh about it in his face and ask him more stupid crap. We're all just looking like, dude, what the duck, chill out, his dog ducking pass. A moment later, we all hear a scream, and Hugo has Ernesto on the floor, beating the crap out of his face. We all knew it was a really bad ducking beatdown. Hugo storms off after cussing him out, and that's when we see it. Ducking teeth on the floor. Here's to you, Hugo. Rest in peace, Max. Story 24. Well, I was supposed to walk into my manager's office, hold an epic rant about all the things I disliked about the company, and then tell him I'd quit because I had been offered another job closer to home. Perhaps even flash my butt cheeks in a theatrical fashion. Well, no, but I was pumped up. When I walk in all ready to let loose, he looks at me and says, "I know what time it is. It's the last day of the month. People only ever come here on that day to tell me they're leaving. I really hope you're not leaving." "Are you leaving?" Yes, actually, I am." "Sorry to hear that. I will need a minute to process this. Could you come back in 10 minutes? I would like to hear why you're leaving and what you're going to do. But right now, I need a minute." A&D, it's gone. The anger, the things I wanted to say, were all gone. Felt like a deflated balloon. Turns out I never met the person behind the manager. Turns out I could really like that person. Turns out I should have disliked our overseas owners, not my own regional manager. Still left, because I needed to spend more time with my kids, but I still occasionally email the man who I was supposed to yell at. It taught me to not take everything my employer/company does too personally. Story 25. Was a lot attendant at a Chevy dealership. I was taking a car through the car wash, and when the blow dryer came on, I turned the wiper on to dry the windshield like I always do. Wiper gets blown off and cracks the windshield. My boss tells me I'm paying for it and it's going to be $600. The next day I came in and showed him a picture of the sign outside the car wash that stated, "Operator not responsible for damages," and argued my case about why I shouldn't have to pay for it. He told me if I'm not going to pay it, then I don't have a job. I said, "So is that it then?" He said, "Yeah, you're fired." I took off my work shirt and threw it in his face, said, "Take your ducking shirt back then," and stormed off through the dealership without a shirt, peeled tire in the parking lot, and left. One of my friends sent me the security camera footage. I might post it if anyone wants to see it. Story 26. The best I saw was when I was working construction on a power plant on night shift. We are out in the middle of the country, no one around for at least a half mile. There was this one guy that was working and he enjoyed singing. Now this isn't the sing to yourself kind. It's the top of your lungs singing. All the guys got a good laugh from him when he would start belting out a song. But the boss didn't care for it when he heard it. So I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with construction work. The term dragging up is a common thing. People leave all the time on a moment's notice. Well, the singing man was on top of this structure that was about 80 feet in the air just going at it. He's singing and dancing. We're laughing our butts off at this guy. Just so happens this was right next to the boss's trailer. Boss man comes out yelling to STFU at the guy. Well, our rock star just flips him off 80 feet in the air and says, "Damn you, I'm dragging up." Then proceeds to climb down, then walks out the gate like a boss. All the guys that saw this are on the ground, holding their ribs from laughing so hard. Boss man just yells, "Get back to work." Best quit ever. Story 27. I worked as a lifeguard at a pool, and one guy who'd been there 8 years used the city's formal letterhead paper, typed, "I quit," John Doe, and pinned it to the message board in the staff room. 17-year-old me thought it was badass. Story 28. This guy at an ice cream parlor decided to supersize everyone's ice creams with an extra scoop. It wasn't very epic at the beginning, until his manager saw what he was doing and decided to call him into a room in the back of the store, possibly an office of some kind. And all I hear is, "How could you give away so much ice cream, you ducking idiot? You gave away 3 times the amount of ice cream you should have." And this guy responds with, "I'm sorry, but if you get to eat half the tubs after your breakup with John and put all the workload on us while you play Minesweeper on your computer, I think everyone should have some silence." Oh wait, they wouldn't cause your fat ass ate it all. I quit. Younger me was most likely stifling his laughter and wouldn't be proud of me posting this at 1:30 in the morning and somehow remembering it. Disclaimer, some parts of this might be my mind filling in as it was 4 years ago, possibly. Story 29. The 73 stairs of doom were what we called the employee entrance at an old job. You parked on top of a hill, went through the security shack, and then down 77 steps to get to the warehouse. One fine day, I was hiking my way up the 77 to freedom when I gradually start to pick up an argument at the top. It's the old rummy security guard who thought he was head of the FBI, screeching at the young half-stone kid. This was a common occurrence, but as I got to the top, I heard the following. "Do you like working here? Do you like wearing that uniform? You like wearing that badge, that shirt, those pants?" The kid responded, "No." And as I opened the door to the shack, he dropped trow, kicked his pants off, and strode through the parking lot to his car in tighty whities. Many, many years later, at the same company, different state, I saw a part-time sub tear her company t-shirt off in a similar manner and walk out in her bra in the middle of a VT winter. Coincidence, I'm sure, but I like to think there is something about this company that makes people want to strip when they quit. And after 21 years, I'm really ready to strip. Story 30. Worked at Tim Hortons for 7 years through high school and college or university. Had the busiest day of my entire time there because of the Sidney Crosby Stanley Cup parade in my HT. And the HR manager comes in acting like a total crap face. I was literally dripping sweat into people's food because I was being overworked and we were short-staffed. This gal decides to come in and give us crap for not being as happy as a Disney employee being gifted a Ferrari. Got pissed and went out back to rant to the baker. Supervisor overheard it and tattled. I was fired for insubordination. Mind you, I did say that she made me want to smack her for the way she speaks to me. Walked out onto the floor where we were already understaffed and had angry customers and yelled out that, "I've just been fired. Have a wonderful day, everybody." Oh, and if you're wondering why your food is taking so long, it's because the manager here would rather scold us and make us work harder than find replacements. Nobody clapped. It wasn't magical. And everyone was dumbfounded and just kind of stared. But I felt better and never looked back. Duck you, Steve, and duck your daddy's little princess daughter who you gave HR to. Story 31. This isn't really a I quit, because it's not so easy to just quit the army, but pretty close. I was stationed in Europe, and while on guard duty at the motor pool, a fellow soldier went to the barracks and lifted the keys for the M3 Bradley he was a crew member on. The next guard shift he told his guardmate, 2 people at a post, he was going to walk around for a few. He unlocked his Bradley, fired it up, and then proceeded to crash the gate and head out towards the East German border. The other guy was on the radio in a heartbeat, and the next thing we had 8 tanks, 6 Bradleys, a couple of men in jeeps, and 4 helicopters from another base running him down. We had orders to shoot and take him out if he went beyond the 1K zone, 1 kilometer of the east-west border. For whatever reason, he stopped to take a piss and was captured and was found to be schizo and unstable and is receiving 50% pay to this day disability. Not so much quit as relieved. Story 32. Busboy at the horrible restaurant I used to work at got into a huge argument with a manager in the middle of the restaurant. She was trying to get him to shut up and keep the drama away from the customers. He turned around, clocked another busboy in the face, pulled down one of those wheelie carts piled high with plates and glasses, sending shattered ceramic and glass everywhere, and then bolted out the door. It really bothered me that he punched that other busboy instead of the manager. She totally deserved it. Story 33. So I didn't witness this, but it's a ducking legend around my workplace. I work in the rental shop of a ski resort. All of the equipment is barcoded, and we use these little scanners to check things out to people when they rent, and check them in when they return the equipment. Well, these scanners are linked to these bases/chargers, which have barcodes on them for syncing each scanner to its respective base, so the scanner can talk to the computer. Now, if you take scanner A and use it to scan the barcode on base B, the whole computer system crashes and gets paralyzed until a tech can drive all the up to the mountain to get everything back online. I guess the software really doesn't like having 2 scanners hooked into one base. Supposedly, a few years back, on New Year's Eve, our busiest day of the year, one employee had had enough, just decided he was done and scanned that barcode, crashing the entire system and derailing our entire operation in the middle of the rush, and just walked out of the building. He picked up his check when it was printed, and then no one ever saw him again. Story 34. Brother worked for a senior food delivery company. They had horrible management with a completely incompetent boss. He had to keep covering shifts and doing jobs he wasn't qualified for. One day, the a-hole boss asks him to come back while doing his delivery route to help prep cooking. He comes back in a bad mood, and she, for some reason, gets on his case for coming back mid-route. Again, she told him to come back. So he right then and there says, I quit. Nothing too fancy about that, but the best part is as follows. Because his route was half finished, the elderly needed to eat, and all the other drivers had signed out. She had no one else willing to finish my brother's route, but needed it done. So in a last-ditch effort, she gets her grandson to finish it, completely uninsured and under the table. Who would have guessed it? Her grandson, within like an hour, manages to total the brand new delivery van. Him being uninsured left what we estimate to be $20,000 damages to be paid from the boss's pocket. It was a great day for him. Story 35. A group of us went out canvassing with a new hire. We met back at the car to head back to the office, and she wasn't there. Apparently, a couple hours in, she called an Uber, went to the train station, and went home. Called the lead on the train and quit. I want to give her a high five for seeing the writing on the wall way faster than me. Story 36. This isn't nearly as epic as some of the others here, but I was working at a fast food place where the boss was a hole. One night he made us clock out before we'd finished closing down. One of my coworkers just ripped his shirt off, he had another one on under it, threw it on the floor, and walked out the door without a word. He actually stole several $100s of the store's money too, because he hadn't turned it in yet. He was a car hop, so he kept money on him until the end of the day. Talked to him later, and he claimed he honestly forgot about the money and he remembered it a couple minutes after leaving, but was too embarrassed to go back and hand it in. As far as I know, he never got in trouble for it. I suspect the manager was reluctant to report him, because he might get in trouble too if HR found out about some of the crap he was making us do. Story 37. This is my experience, and it's not that epic, but it felt pretty good. I was a bit younger, working in a kitchen. There was a new kid I was training. The night goes as any other night would, and it's about time to start cleaning. There was a big cooking pot full of grease that we had to take outside to the receptacle. This pot of grease is very heavy. We both grab a handle of the pot and lift it up to the thing. Well, his hand slips or something, and I get splashed pretty bad. My pants are covered. We were already outside, so I say something really simple like, I gotta go, or all right, man, later, and walked away and called my girlfriend to come pick me up. I never really said I quit or anything, and I never saw anyone else again except the owner when I went to get my check. My paychecks were frequently late absent, so that was the main reason I left there. Story 38. I didn't see this personally, but my cousin worked for McDonald's. One day he was working drive-thru. He had a customer cuss at him and throw her bag of food back at him for some reason. So he grabbed the bag and whipped it right back in the customer's face. Then he walked out. Story 39. Back in younger days, working for a major wireless service provider, one fellow went into the accounts of senior executives and set them up to call forward each other in an unbreakable loop. Did this at midnight? The problem didn't become apparent till next morning, but for several glorious hours they couldn't call in and their voicemails flooded. This was 2000, so this trick might be unrepeatable today. Story 40. I went to Subway sandwiches. The guy behind the counter was quitting, and he told me if I wanted a sandwich to make it myself, then open the door behind the counter for me. I thought it was a joke, but no. Go ahead. I made the biggest goddamn sandwich the world's ever seen. It was all free. He also said he was gonna walk out and not lock up as a heads up. Shit, I didn't want to rob the place. I just wanted my sandwich. Story 41. I'm still in the process. The plant manager and I got into an argument over personal protective equipment. Basically, I needed gloves because I kept burning my hands. I got huge scars, cause of it, and I knew he didn't like me, but I didn't care. So right after I put in my 2 weeks, and tomorrow being my last day, I went and proved I was one of the best temps he has ever hired. I was in line for a promotion, but I'm not interested if it means I'll get burned by plastic again. Literally, I have trainers, mold techs, even supervisors. Look at me like I'm some diamond in the sky or whatever, and I'm quite known for doing this. But damn, does it feel good too? See your plant managers look at you in disbelief when they realize the best worker is walking out the door and the mother ducker proved it, ha 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 ha, story 42. Nothing too amazing. But I had a friend who worked at McDonald's, decided to quit with no notice. He had a friend push him around the store on a bun rack while singing something about leaving the crap hole behind. He was pushed on the bun rack all the way out into the lobby and out the door, and we all cheered his escape on the way out. Another guy I know was a manager at McDonald's, and when he quit on his last day, he wrote everyone up for stupid things, including one guy for being black, he was white, and another guy for having broccoli stuck between his teeth. The store policy was that a manager had to get all write-ups signed by the employees. So he took off and made the next manager do it. There were a lot of employees that the manager had to have a talk with. It was hilarious. Story 43. Last job I had was hell. I didn't know it going in though, and I probably should have. Second week there, a guy quit by streaking through the workplace. Later on, I heard stories of a guy that quit by trying to light the building on fire. 5 years later, as I was just about to break down from the stress of the job, a guy printed out an I quit letter with blanks in it for your name and the date and all that. He took like 15 people with him when he quit. I should have taken one of those letters and noped out of there, but I had rent to pay. I ended up having like a breakdown and quit after banging my head on my desk so hard. I had a headache and a purple lump on my forehead for a couple weeks after. Story 44. We have this seriously misogynistic guy at my work. He is also a pathological liar and tells all these stories that everyone knows is an absolute lie. No one likes this guy. They all avoid him like the plague. The company hires temp workers in the summer, so a woman I work with was having her son apply before he went to college in the fall. On the last day he worked there, he brought a huge roll of shrink wrap and completely shrink wrapped the other guy's car from top to bottom. The guy came out after everyone else had left and started flipping out. He went back inside and got the bosses to show them. Even the bosses told him, "What do you want us to do? He no longer works here." It was great. Not the best story, but with how vehemently everybody hates this guy, it was awesome. Story 45. Not me, but a guy that worked at the Pie, famous pizza place at Utah. Before I did quit, the first day he worked there, because of an incident with buttermilk ranch dressing. You see, in order to keep said dressing in stock, employees were required to mix up a new 5-gallon batch of it every day or so. Utahns love their ranch and how they pronounce ranch. Inevitably, you would end up with ranch in strange places, my bra, my shoes, and spills weren't uncommon. But on this guy's first day, he managed to let the entire bucket slip off the edge of the cutting board / counter and hit the floor. The result was a sort of upward ranch canoe that covered him from head to toe. Apparently his reaction was to calmly remove his apron and hat and walk out never to be heard from again, not even to pick up his check. Story 46. In the mid-1980s, a guy we knew was going to either get fired or quit Friday. He pretty much knew it as well. On his way out, he had a can of spray paint and wrote "Viva Ayala" on the cubicle partition. I guess that's one reason why security guards should walk people out. Story 47. Best one I ever saw was a coworker at a hotel years ago. The guy was a git, honestly, and no one was sad to see him go. He was about to be fired anyway, for a multitude of reasons. But he walked in one morning, shouted into and throughout the entire hotel lobby how much he hated the place. As he got to the desk, he flipped off the desk manager with a very matter-of-fact, "I quit." Then, blaring a foghorn, he proceeded outside where he pulled several bottle rockets from his jacket, lighting them and throwing them in the air. I'm really surprised he didn't cause more damage than he did. He only wrecked a few pieces of shrubbery and put a nice burn hole through the brand's flag. Still, if nothing else, I've got to give the guy kudos for Flair Story 48. I worked at UPS store 16 years ago with a bunch of my friends. Our boss, the owner, was a weirdo who had a lazy eye. He would look at you with his good eye and turn the other away. He had a wife and kid, but would constantly comment on girls passing her in the shop. He would pleasure himself in the bathroom. The FBI visited. The night before that, all but one of us quit this job. We had partied, and I took my shirt and cleaned a lot of beer that was spelt on the basement floor. I threw that shirt in his face when I quit. We all cursed him out and made a scene as left. The guy still has the shop. I don't think I've ever disliked anyone any more than him. Story 49. At a chain pizza place I worked one day, this kid from corporate showed up and announced the store manager was let go. Half the people working at the time quit on the spot and walked out, including me, but mainly because one of the people quitting gave me my ride to work. Probably a good decision anyways. She was fired for giving people too many hours, and without working 60-hour weeks, it would have paid crap. Story 50. A guy I worked with at an upscale restaurant was fed up with our owner, who was a complete a-hole. He walked out of the kitchen up to the bar. He grabbed a bottle of our most expensive bottle and started chugging it. He poured what was left of the bottle into a pint glass from the bar. The owner came out to see the spectacle. The guy said, "Damn this and damn you." Then he smashed the empty vodka bottle on the floor and then walked out with his pint glass of vodka. The guy was so hardworking and talented at his job, though, that he was able to get it back a few years later. He's still there now. Story 51. I was at a job I hated with a passion. I was gunning for a new job and had one lined up and was just waiting for the call. I was on my day off, a Friday, when I get the call for the new job. I had to start Monday, no other option. I called my supervisor to inform her of the new job, and when she asked when my last day would be, I replied with yesterday and hung up the phone. Story 52. I called the CEO of IBM and told the receptionist that IBM had its head so far up its ass it had to sneeze to tie its shoe, and that it was not longer the right hand, did not know what the left hand was doing. It was the right thumb does not know what the right fingers are doing. That was on a Friday. Monday morning, I had a message on my brick, old PDA thing IBM used, to return my van to Seattle and catch a cab home. I told them to come get the van or I would have it towed. Before noon, two ex-coworkers, came and picked up the keys and my badges. Still do not miss that mess of a company. Story 53. My boss went to the CEO to talk. The CEO personally offered to move some money around and throw him a party that the CEO would attend. And my boss shook his hand and quit. Told the guy, "You have no idea how high I can fly." Story 54, RN here, and had a patient care tech get pulled to the worst floor we have, mean nurses, horrible workload, at 11 p.m., which meant she would be there 8 more hours. Hadn't had much sleep and was pretty fed up anyways. She hugged a couple of her favorite nurses and walked down to the garage and drove off instead of walking down to that unit. Didn't tell anyone. One of the nurses texted her when we got a call from the boss lady and said, "You didn't think I was serious?" Oh, I left. Story 55, worked with a dude when I was in high school. Just out of the military, he had to walk like 5 miles to get to the Hardee's we worked at. One day, they call him in. He says it'll be a couple hours. He had to get a babysitter, then walk. He shows up 2.5 hours later and get fired on the spot for not coming in the moment he was called. He spit in the assistant manager's face, walked into the storeroom, grabbed the first box he saw, happened to be a box of salt shakers, and kicked the back door open and strolled into the horizon. Story 56. Buddy of mine was a busboy with me at a restaurant near the college we go to. They paid us like $4.50 per hour. One of many reasons I left, but gave us tip cuts. So we got a check plus an envelope of cash, which almost made the job worth it. Anyway, a kid pukes all over a table, and they tell my friend he has to clean it up. He looks at the table, then looks in them and just goes, "Nah." So the manager is just confused and says, "What?" "Nah, I'm just gonna go home." And he just walked out. He told me that for what they paid us, he didn't think it was worth it. Story 57. I played Take This Job and Shove It by Johnny Paycheck over the cashier intercom at the end of my shift at Winn-Dixie in high school. I then clocked out and didn't come back. I was told at lunch to put my 2 weeks notice in or get fired because I was caught selling alcohol to my friend. The store didn't have cameras and I wasn't guilty. I thought it was rather nice of me to finish my shift first. A week later, my new boss had to pay the manager $100 and a case of beer to allow me to stock bread in the same store. That guy was a piece of work. Story 58. Before I managed the ice cream shop, a friend of mine who worked with me was leaving to get a new job in a few weeks anyway. He got called into a shift at the shop while I running a birthday for 24-year-olds. He thought he was coming for a normal, lazy shift, Instead, he arrived to find a bunch of small children hyped on ice cream and presents. He took one look at all of us and said, "Nope, nope, nope," and then walked out the back door and went to smoke a bowl in the parking lot. Story 59. Had a temp job in shipping receiving at a warehouse for the metal casing that holds supercomputers. Was one of 2 employees. My boss, though not an idiot outright, was just really odd and uptight to the point of creepy. He went into the showroom at some point to deal with a customer, and I said, "Duck it," scrawled, "It's not you, it's me," on an invoice sheet, and ran like the wind out the loading doors. Let me tell you, running in steel-toe work boots is duckin' tough. Story 60. I quit my job in a constructed language, but provided the translation as well. On the last day of work, I gave 14 days of notice, I had 2 huge plush penguins with me who said goodbye to the colleagues as well. Another person went on a shooting spree when he was fired, fortunately with a camera in the restricted areas of the company, not with a gun. Story 61. Used to work at the movie theater. Had a guy quit by folding up his uniform and leaving it in front of the manager's office door with a 2-page note on why he quit, why he didn't like working there, etc., etc. Then, as he was walking out, threw his hat up in the air behind him, turned around and flipped us all off. Spent the rest of my shift laughing about it with coworkers. Best moment I've experienced at work ever. Story 62. My previous boss abused me mentally and physical by making me give him and his wife's rides wherever he wants outside of work and crap. Last time, he openly screamed at me in front of everyone. I said that's it and screamed, "Duck you, Miss Daisy." Told my bigger boss everything, and he tried to quietly handle it since they lived together. So I told HR and let that crap storm unroll. Dude prob didn't get in any trouble, but it was nice to his ass on blast for once, instead of me. Story 63. Not me, but at a movie theater, we had one guy quit by walking in with a boombox, hopping up on the concession stand, and then start playing Another One Bites the Dust. He had painted "I Quit" on his chest. He did it on the busiest night right at rush hour, around 7 to 8 p.m. on a Friday. This was the opening night for The Dark Knight. Duck you, Anthony. Story 64. She technically got fired, but she was told to quit. I don't know how it worked out, but she came in late and she was always going to the bathroom. After lunch break, the supervisor came into our area and asked her to come with him. 5 minutes later, we see her sprinting to the back entrance of the building and see the supervisor, a couple coordinators, and cops chasing after her. I guess she missed a court date and the cops had a warrant after her, but she was never seen after that. Story 65. I came back to the USA after living overseas for a long time. Jet-lagged and hungry after the long flight, I decided to stop at a Waffle House on my way home. It was the first American meal I'd had in years. After cooking my order, the cook started cursing, threw down his apron, and stomped off. The waitress gave me the waffles for free. Story 66. Not really purposely quitting, but a temp who had been working with me for almost a year posted a review of the company on Google, painting the company in not such a great light. I mean, straight criticizing the software we sell, complaining about our customers. It was bad. It got brought to the attention of the floor manager, who fired her immediately. We could hear him from his office. "A temp posted this. End her assignment immediately." Story 67. We got a new boss at our sandwich shop. He was an idiot, and the old boss was really cool. One of the guys I worked with for 2 years had Asperger's, and on the second day he said to me, "I don't like the new boss. I think I'm going to quit." Then he walked over to the new boss, told him he quit, apologized, and just walked out the door. Story 68. Worked at Pizza Hut as a teenager. Grew to hate the job with all the stupid drama that goes with any fast food job. When I finally decided I had enough, I took one of the brown bags into the bathroom, took a dump in it, then put it on the office desk right before we locked up for the night with a note. "For all the crap I've taken, here's some back." Story 69. This guy rage quit a Pep Boys one day, and on his way out went full Hulk and threw a dozen cabled-together display bikes into the 6-lane boulevard. These were heavy knockoff beach cruisers, no less. Even 4 employees couldn't tug them back onto the sidewalk. Someone had to find the key and unlock them as drivers honked and cursed. Story 70. Threw my office keys to the receptionist as I waltzed off after quitting. They hit a 12 by 10 pane of glass and went straight through. Boom! The keys had a big piece of steel on them, making them hard to lose. That glass was a day-old new branding. I just carried on like I meant it while my students cheered. Felt like a king. My arsehole was puckered thinking about the bill. What is the most epic way you have seen someone quit or be fired? Story 1. My friend's fast food joint has a name for it. If someone's just had it, they say they're going to get a pink lemonade. This originated from a guy that had apparently had enough, and he took off his apron and hat, went to the soda machine, filled himself up a big pink lemonade, and walked out. So, after the next guy quit in the same fashion, they all refer to it as getting a pink lemonade. And they all do it when they quit, whether it's a walkout or planned. Story 2. Used to work at 911 many years ago. Had a guy who had been there 4 to 5 years, so he's a veteran and has seen it all. Everyone down there pretty much hated their job and all the forced overtime. Everyone is tired, worn out, hates their job, and cranky. He is as well, but he fits in with everyone else at this point. He got a really nasty call of someone who got hit, I forget which. He gets the suspect description and all of that stuff and spends several minutes on the phone with the caller, walking them through some basic first aid on how to help the person. The caller is freaking out. The police can't find the caller because she gave the wrong information, so he's trying to get that out of her. Meanwhile, the caller is seeing the victim bleed out and is freaking out. Finally, he gets a good location and the cops find her and he gets off the phone. It's an awful call. He takes about a 20 to 30 minute break. No one cares. Sometimes you have to do that. Comes back in and takes some BS call about someone parked in a handicap spot or something. Hangs up, unplugs his phone, tells everyone he can't handle that anymore, walks out. Immediately drives all the way across town, checks himself into the local psychiatric hospital, and never comes back to work. Story 3. Worked in a call center for a supermarket bank for 2 years while studying. Our department was supposed to there to help with online banking issues, normal browser fixes and password resets and that kind of thing. Customers caught on to the fact that we usually had the lowest wait times for the queue and would call through to us instead of the customer service line that could actually help with banking issues. Management decided the best way to handle this was to cross-train us, so we would be able to deal with basic banking issues instead of giving the customer the right number or passing them through to the right team. The main call types you would get were people asking why we had charged a fee for them not paying their bill or why we had blocked their account when they were hundreds, thousands of pounds behind on payments. It was ducking, horrible. Straight up 100 to 200 calls in a 4-hour shift instead of the 30 or so that we had dealt with before. People crying that we were ruining their child's Christmas by blocking an unpaid card or that they wouldn't be able to eat because we were making them pay the monthly minimum payment. Everyone hated it, but there was one guy, really quiet, didn't talk to anyone much. Just came in, did his shift, and went home every day. Until finally he cracked. I was halfway across the call floor from him about an hour into a 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift when he suddenly stood up, screamed, "Well, maybe you should pay your ducking bill next time then." He then threw his headset at a window, picked up his keyboard, and smashed it off the desk before walking over to his manager and quietly and conversationally saying, "I ducking hate this place. I won't be back," and then walking out the door. It was great. Story 4. I was on an offshore oil platform that was run by an old operator that had been there for years. Our company had recently purchased this platform and they sent a young lead operator to straighten him out. This old dude listens to the guy for about 5 minutes and then goes upstairs, makes one call to his old company, and 30 minutes later, a helicopter from another company lands and flies him to his new job, leaving the new boss wondering what just happened. Story 5. This kid I worked with in high school literally skated out of the store. We worked a supermarket called Vons, and his car broke down. He had to skate several miles for his shift and got there right on time. They told him that he was too sweaty to work and had to go home and change and come back in. They also mentioned a write-up. Kid just said, "Duck that," and skated from the loading dock in the back of the store through one of the aisles and cashiers to the front door. Story 6. Okay, so this happened to me, so I don't know if it counts, but this happened shortly before I graduated high school, and this is a story my friends love, so I might as well share it here. Years ago, I was browsing Walmart for a new video game I wanted. I'd just gotten out of school for the weekend and hadn't changed out of my uniform. Stupid public school uniforms, I'm sure some of you can relate. Thing is, most public school uniforms are like a red or green polo shirt and black pants, or a plaid skirt, right? My school's uniform was a blue polo shirt with back pants. So I'm pacing back and forth in about a 4 to 5 foot area in my own little world, debating on getting this game I saw. I hadn't noticed the 40 to 50 something woman behind me speaking until she more or less grabbed the shoulder of my shirt and turned me around with an extremely agitated, "Excuse me, I'm talking to you." So thinking that she was just trying to ask me to move out of the way or something, I say, "Oh, sorry," and take several steps back. I was confused since I'm not exactly a big guy and was far from blocking her way. But she only glared at me with more annoyance and started laying into me about terrible service, what have you, and then stormed off. I've never been a very confrontational person, so I sort of just laughed and said, "Okay," before going back to looking at the games. Not even 5 minutes later, she returns with a manager who looks like Ron Swanson. If he shaved his mustache and worked a little Met Lab on the side, who looks just as angry at me as the woman, thinking that they're going to lay into me for being rude or something. I brace myself. What happened next is entirely not what I expected. In my defense, I do not shop at Walmart often. My general philosophy is that nobody shops at Walmart because they want to be at Walmart. They shop at Walmart because all the alternatives are either closed, do not have what you need, or Walmart is the last vestige of humanity in the ongoing apocalypse. So needless to say, it had not occurred to me how my school uniform was the spitting image of the typical employee here. I wasn't there to check on the latest fashion trends for soul-sucking retail. I was there for a goddamn video game. It was at the moment that I took several seconds to register the manager berating me for being so disrespectful to a customer that it dawned on me what was going on. They both thought I was an employee, and the woman was trying to get me to open the locked glass for her to get a game for duck if I know. So I tried to cut into, tell the manager the best that my stunned self could muster into a, "Hey man, I don't work here," but the manager wouldn't have it. In front of the woman, he starts quoting some self-penned rules of customer service, which all things considered, were pretty solid and I think more Walmart stores could benefit from. Solid rules, dude. And how I was misrepresenting the store and so on. I made a terrible, terrible mistake when he said, "And even all these years later, I will goddamn quote him to you, you bring dishonor to the Walmart name with behavior like this." He went full-on Walmart weeaboo mode, and I laughed. To be fair, laughing was about the rudest thing I could have done, but when you take into perspective that I wasn't even an employee there, the moment I burst into laughter, the manager ducking lost it. We're talking like I am at least 70% sure that someone for Hollywood was recording him and used his wails of hysteria and anger to give the dinosaurs voice in Jurassic World. He starts railing into me, red-faced, shaking, and the woman was practically rooting him on like a bleacher girl as he starts yelling at me to not bother coming into work tomorrow or at all, yada yada. I'm still laughing and he's not cutting me a break because at this point, we've gotten on a train that has no signs of stopping anytime soon. I have said like at least 4 times now that I don't work there. And finally he replies with, "Not anymore, you don't." So I never did buy my game as I was escorted out of the store by another employee who was at least calm enough to hear me out. And then he starts laughing as he hears all that's going on. We exchange numbers, and to this day, we duck around on Steam and crap. I never did get to collect my last paycheck, though. Story 7, guy taped his resignation letter to his monitor, backdated 2 weeks, and never showed up again. That's completely unprofessional, said no one who was working there. Story 8, didn't see it happen in person, but one that comes to mind was when a JetBlue flight attendant quit by deploying a plane's emergency evacuation slide, grabbing 2 beers and telling passengers to go duck themselves, and sliding down onto the tarmac before driving home. Story 9. If an epic fail counts, I have a story. I detasseled during the summer, and one year I managed to con a few friends into doing it with me. The work sucks, but the pay is good, and we had a pretty good season overall, except for Mike. Great guy and a decent worker, but he was always the last one into the field and the first one out, which doesn't earn a lot of respect from me or the other supervisors. Towards the end of the season, we had a really hot day, and by lunch break, most of us were ready to call it quits. Mike took it a step further and actually did quit. Went to our contractor and explained that he couldn't do the job anymore and was quitting. Contractor tried to change his mind, but Mike was committed and sat on the bus the rest of the day. We finished for the day about an hour later, and corporate told our contractor that we had no more fields to pick. Mike quit literally an hour before we ended for the season and threw away his bonus with it. Story 10. I don't think this is epic, but I was a hero at the firm. Long time ago, I was working at an accounting firm, and my boss was this black English lady who had a bad temper and just loved to harass people working under her. They had went through a lot of people in my position who would just quit because this lady was just mean and got off on being mean. She wasn't even a great worker, so I never understood why they kept her as long as they did. Anyway, everyone at the firm hated her a lot. She was all over my case after a month being there for the dumbest stuff, and this went on all the time. I went to HR and complained about her a couple times. They talked to her, and she'd be okay for a couple weeks, then revert back to her normal self. I made it about 8 months until she and I and her assistant were in a meeting, and she just starts harping on me about the absolute dumbest stuff and insinuated I wasn't doing any work. I finally broke. I have a short temper and had put up with her crap long enough. I said, the really weird thing is I don't understand. And as I said this, I got up to the front of the meeting room and opened the door so everyone in the firm could hear me, how I've been here this long and you haven't fired me, as I'm yelling really loud now. I clearly am a terrible employee. Now she realizes she's going to be in a world of trouble because she's about to lose another employee, and she's shaking and says, Okay, sit down. Let's talk about this. I yell super loud, we're past talking. I walk out into the hallway and I'm yelling as I head toward HR. The amazing thing is, I don't understand how you've held the position for this long because you're the worst person I've ever worked with in my life. And as I'm walking down the hall, I'm passing people's offices and they're applauding me. The HR guy hears me and is in the hallway before I kick and even get to his office. She's following me now and is terrified and says nothing as I keep yelling, how the hell did you get this position? You have no business being a boss of any kind. You have the worst people skills I've ever seen. You're a terrible human being in general. And by the time I said that, I was standing in front of the HR guy and said, "Sorry, man, can't take it anymore," and quit. He nodded. I was a hero at the place. I was friend with a few people, and they would tell me months after they were still talking about that. The lady got dumped shortly after. Story 11. We had a car dealer who was also the it person, was not paid extra for the responsibility, emailed the general manager's search history and less than honorable web traffic after being fired for not upselling a customer that was also his family. The GM quit after we saw his very racist internet history. I also learned what Backpage was that day. The new GM hired the it dude back as fast as possible. Story 12. More of an epic fail, but still great. Dude is under the impression he is being fired soon. He stews on it for a few days and then marches into his boss's office to address the issue. Apparently, he gets caught up in the emotion of it and moves from conversation to duck you. I quit and then calls his boss, every name under the sun. Everyone hates you. You're a huge Karen. Duck this job and duck you for wanting to fire me. I don't want to fire you though? Ah, I see. Well, can I stay then? No, get out. Story 13. I'd been at this place for 3 years, and though I began as the secretary who just answers phones, I got myself promoted to assistant to the national sales manager as the account manager for the U.S. contract key and wholesale accounts. I was also their unofficial IT and their official customer service specialist, neither of which I was compensated for, and trust me, I did deserve compensation for it. Problem was the sole reason for the company's high administrative turnover. Out of the 11 in admin, 5 were family members and officers. The other 6 included me, and the only person there longer than me was a high school dropout making $14 an hour doing basic RAP who'd been there for 7 years. Everyone else was fresh less than 1 year. Don't ignore red flags, guys. Decided I was being paid way too much. I was being paid half the national average for my position, excluding the extras I should have contracted out to them instead of giving for free. So set her animosity on me. To my credit, I lasted about 18 months of her harassment and undermining. Couldn't go to HR because she was mom. I realize now I was also suffering postpartum and understand that's how I lost my resilience during that time. One day I just had it. I was done with it and wasn't having any more of it. I'll mention in an attempt to placate me after I'd spoken to the VP of OPs, they gave me an office of my own. So I couldn't concentrate and was angry and wanted to quit but couldn't. So I surfed the web and had an itch for a good horror story. I stumbled across Reddit for the first time. I was immediately sucked in, and to cut it short, I spent the following 4 months clocking in, reading no sleep for 8 hours, clocking out, and became a lunch break stoner because duck that stress, and got away with it in the privacy of my office. Finally, I really was being overpaid. Anyway, my numbers came in and my supervisor decided to spy on me and came to talk to me in my office all enraged and pissed, screaming at me for deleting my emails. Everything on that computer is mine. It belongs to me, not you, har Karen. Even my personal email and family pictures? And I tuned her out until she responded to my blank-faced stare with, "Just go sit in the front office." So I collected all my stuff while she stood there, asking me what I was doing, walked out right past her, donated my personal desk lamp to the accountant for her daughter, who once complimented it, walked out the back factory doors, letting everyone know I was gone, and left. Never felt such relief. Didn't have to deal with their crap ever again. Story 14. After high school, I worked in the typical jobs like gas station and grocery store. I spent a few years in a gas station that was a satellite of a convenience store. The gas station kiosk was separate from the store, and I didn't see any colleagues all shift. Worked completely alone. There were all kinds of reasons I should have pulled the pin through that time, like the manager, who stayed in her office in the convenience store and paid zero attention to the gas station, not being able to keep staff, so I would find out after working 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. that there was no relief, and I had to stay until 10 p.m., then come back at 5 a.m. the next day to reopen. Did I mention I had no coworkers, no relief, no breaks? Side note, I started out in this job bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, so to speak. They used to give people who scored 100% on the mystery shops a $100 gift certificate for the station, which would fill my tank 5 or 6 times over. I got those every month for half a year by being able to recognize mystery shoppers and give them good service. They stopped giving out the awards because they were spending too much money on us. So anyway, I began giving fewer and fewer ducks as all this wore on and got old. In my last year, I stopped taking bees from the customers, like I'm a friend of Dollar Manager and I get 40 car wash tickets at the discount price every week. Or this pump isn't working, so you have to give me free gas on another one. One Friday, the manager actually showed up in the gas station kiosk about 20 minutes before the end of my shift and asked me to come over to the store. When I went outside to cross the parking lot and saw the district manager's car there, I had no doubts what was going on. I had my work shirt and hat ready to hand in before I got in the door. They had no idea how to react when I just casually took the news that they were dumping me. I drove across town to a place a third of the distance from home as that place was, and got a job there 45 minutes after I was fired from the other place. Stayed there and was the boss's pet until I got hired by the 911 center I work at now. I know, not epic, but it made my day. I remember March 27th every year and mentally thank my ex-manager for helping me leave that crappy job. I also grin every time I go past the convenience store, which got bought out by the gas station company and turned into a full company-owned station, dumping my ex-manager in the process. Story 15. At the tail end of November, I started working as cashier at a wholesale store. I was really happy with how nice all of my coworkers were. So I really didn't mind coming into work because having good coworkers definitely made the job easier. The holiday season goes by and I noticed the managers have started hiring people like crazy. I asked someone why they thought that management was hiring so many people. They said, lots of people are about to get fired. They usually don't hire like this until spring. About a month later, I had 2 days off. When I got back, a coworker who was extremely gossipy but otherwise really nice told me that the day before the cops came and arrested a bunch of employees from the front end, membership, and cashier. Over the next few days, more front-end girls were getting fired, and some just didn't show up. One girl who was fired, her sister that worked there as well, was pregnant. Her due date was soon, so she took her maternity leave and has yet to come back. During that time, I got really paranoid that I was going to lose my job for whatever reason. So I went up to a manager and said something along the lines of, "Hey, I know a lot of the girls are getting fired and stuff, and I just wanted to know if my job was safe. If there's anything I can do to do my job better, please let me know, because I want to do the best work I can." And she said, "Oh no, sweetie, don't worry. Those girls are doing something really, really bad. Don't worry, we really value you." So what could have been happening that was really, really bad? After about 12 girls getting fired, arrested, I find out through the same gossipy coworker that it was for embezzlement. And it all basically started with one girl from membership. When you get a specific membership, you get a $100 off coupon. So this girl would create fake memberships under false names and use those memberships to get 100 Visa gift cards. Then use the coupon. Free $100. So she would get $100, $200 to $300 a day. People started noticing she was doing something, so she would give gift cards to them to shut them up. So she had a little operation going and got comfortable, and ended doing $600 to $1,000 per day. So now the company started getting fishy because she was going crazy with it. Turns out she stole about $40,000 since October, 4 months. Story 16. My buddy was told he was getting laid off. He knew it was coming, and to duck with them, he screamed, "You can't fire me!" and went limp in his chair. 2 security guys had to carry him out. Story 17. When I worked at Walmart, one of my friends quit in a great way. Some backstory first. We had this manager, Bruce, who was a real idiot, treated people like crap, and he also had no sense of personal space, and his breath was terrible. Also, keep in mind how much Walmart hates the union. Okay, so my friend was quieting. He goes home on lunch, prints off a bunch of flyers for the local union chapter, puts them on cars in the parking lot, hangs them in the back, lunchroom, hides them under products on shelves. Then he goes to seasonal, gets a basket, goes to pharmacy, fills the basket with toothpaste, mouthwash, dental floss, toothbrushes, etc. He walks up to Bruce, who was at the front of the store on a very busy day, gives him the basket and says, "Your breath ducking stinks," and walks out. For the next month, we had head office people there in full panic mode, looking for all the union propaganda and telling us how evil the union is. Story 18. I worked in a warehouse for a 24-hour factory and led the night crew. At this particular time of the year, we were swamped and working 80-hour weeks for some time. Naturally, morale was low and attitudes were shifting south. One fork truck driver in particular was really rough around the edges and fairly insubordinate. I started detecting alcohol on his breath in the middle of the night, not when he arrived. Let my manager know and relocated him to less populous tasks. One of these was to drive down into the garage and clear out some of our scrap bales every few hours. One night, I was a few hundred yards from the baler system, replacing chocks, when the guy came into the garage and parked his truck. He hopped out, opened the outside garage door, and disappeared behind a dumpster. A few moments later, his head poked around the corner, and he slithered back to his truck and into the building, only without clearing any bales. I made my way to the door and smelled cinnamon schnapps. Looking far and wide, I ended up finding a bottle beneath the dumpster with the cap loose and dripping. Suffice to say, it was a done deal. Also confirmed with security in their pigeon-eye view of him taking pulls from the bottle, my manager was looped in and asked me to confront him privately and to first ensure safety. So I brought him into the office and asked him if he had been drinking. No. So I reached into the desk drawer, harnessed my inner hard-ass teacherness, pulled out the bottle and set it in front of him on the desk. "What's this?" I exclaimed. His bloodshot eyes widened. He let out a sigh and a chuckle, remarking, "Okay, but I promise you this is only the second time I've done this here." I guess in his mind, that was justification for the risk he put 200 employees in as he squealed around the shop on an 8,000-pound machine. His wife came and picked him up, and by morning my manager had called and terminated him. Best part, in the weeks that followed, we started finding more fifths of Hot 100 around the warehouse, up in the racks, in actual production pallets, so other departments found them, and even in maintenance totes. We found 6 in all, and I had a deal with my crew that I'd buy pizza when we found number 10. I bought them pizza anyway. Story 19. I used to work in a deli of a supermarket that was constantly busy. I used to work from 3 to 10, and the store was notorious for hiring people with day jobs and would constantly call in saying they were going to be late. Everyone that worked there hated this job, but it paid well. This one particular day I was working, it was busier than normal. One of the night shift guys called out, and the other called saying he was going to be late. Ducking wonderful. I was helping customers as best as I could and trying to coordinate with the 2 other deli clerks our breaks, since we now have a call out and a late show. I never stopped helping customers. I was working while I talked. Out of nowhere, I hear a voice in the background. Excuse me, I've been waiting here for 15 minutes. Please stop talking and do your ducking job. I turned around, said, "Sorry, I'll be right with you." Some of the customers in line gave her a look and tried to calm her down. I turn around to weigh whatever order I just cut, and she comes up to the counter and screams, "I will get you all fired if you don't help me." The other 2 deli clerks turn around and give her a "you're ducking ridiculous" look. I look at the woman and say, "Threatening to get us fired won't do anything besides make you wait in line even longer. Getting us fired, nobody gets help. Do you want to explain to all the customers behind you why they're not going to get their food? No? Duck off then." I took my apron off, threw it in the garbage, and walked out. Never even went back for my last paycheck. Story 20. Got a good one. Used to work for a Fortune 500 bank. At the year-end party, they give out the Employee of the Year award. It comes with a $20,000 bonus and a bunch of other prizes. This guy won and accepted the award on stage in front of like 4,000 people. The company even brought his family to the ceremony. After the awards were handed out, there was an open bar party. The winner got white girl wasted and eventually passed out. An executive tried to wake him up but couldn't, so they called 911. An ambulance shows up and the EMTs put him on a stretcher. They start wheeling him to the ambulance and he wakes up, unstraps himself, and punches a female EMT in the face hard enough to knock her out. Then he passes out again. He was never seen again. Story 21. Worked as a dishwasher for a fairly upscale banquet hall when I was 18 and straight out of high school. Well, they had a tendency to hold on to paychecks because the company was almost broke. Well, the owner and proprietor was driving around in a Benz, and after 4 weeks of not seeing a paycheck, supposed to be paid bi-weekly, I decided enough was enough. As soon as my coward of a boss finished telling us payments will be held another week, I promptly went into the storage room and smashed every plate, bowl, and mug in the place. Told my boss to duck himself, took all the muck from the dishwasher filter, and smeared it on his Benz and ducked off out of that place for good. Still haven't seen my money, and that was 10 years ago. Story 22. Woman in the office, some years back, got completely plastered at the Christmas party. Nothing new there, but she told the boss to his face that she thought he wasn't actually. She was a bit unhinged, though. When she got trapped in the lift, she sang opera badly for the 2.5 hours it took to release her. The screeching echoed up the lift shaft and drove everyone mad. Anyway, she turned up the next morning in the throes of a gargantuan hangover, and the boss proved he wasn't A by calling her in and saying that he knew she was drunk, and it was Christmas and all that, and he'd just appreciate an apology. "No!" she screamed so everyone could hear. "I said you were A, and you are. You, out the door in 5 minutes." Story 23. I worked 3rd shift at a gas station my first year in college. My girlfriend happened to be the assistant manger, and the store's manager had the hots for her. So the dude would give me a hard time, make me clean or organs things that really didn't need to be done. But he liked bossing me around because he wanted to get with girlfriend, made him feel like a big man or whatever. Anyway, late one night shift, the phone rings and it's the manager. He starts yelling at me about a preferred customer had come in, and I was rude. Nothing was stocked on the shelves and other random BS. 1. It's a gas station. There are no preferred customers, especially at 3 a.m. 2. No one had been in the store all night. 3. I was ducking sick of this douchebag, so I wrote a Dear John letter of resignation, because his name was John, and left it on the counter. I then proceeded to take every single meat product I could find in the store and throw it all in the parking lot. Hot dogs everywhere. I locked the store and went to my GF house, who actually lived directly across the street. I gave her the store keys, told her I quit, and went to bed. I woke up the next day to see the parking lot full of birds. Birds as far as the eye could see, until you look past the gas station parking lot. I never got docked pay or anything for the event. I think he wrote it off somehow, and as I could have pushed on harassment if I'd wanted to. Anyway, like a year later, I run into this dude. In my head, I'm thinking, oh crap, this is gonna end in a fight. He bought me lunch, we sat and talked, never mentioning the meat, birds, or my GF. Story 24. I was the one who led the exodus from the crafty, dying retail chain that I was working in. I was the star of the company who did everything to see the company succeed. I optimized my workload, always completed assignments on time, and was the gem of the store in the eyes of the customers. After a new boss came in, I was suddenly being blamed for things I didn't do. My work ethic was being criticized, despite the fact I helped out all parts of the stores and not just my area. After a written report and some other bullcrap, I decided it was time for me to quit before my good name was soiled any further by Mr. 25 years in retail. I handed in my 2 weeks notice, told him that at the end of the day, we're both just guys trying to make a living, and walked out of the back storage area. After I left the area, I informed all of my coworkers of my plans, to their surprise. As the last day came to a close, I bid my coworkers farewell and informed them that they all had the potential to do great things and to not be shackled by an ass-backwards company. I told them to finish their degrees, find better work, and to pursue their dreams. As I walked out the door, I looked back to see my coworkers waving goodbye to me. It was a beautiful sight, and I knew that I walked out the better person between me and the manager. As of now, I was informed by a coworker that many left the company after my departure, and most have found far better jobs than the company they were at before. Good luck out there, guys, and don't let anyone tell you that what you're doing now is the best you can do. Story 25. At an old help desk job, I knew I was going to get fired at some point. Just a matter of when. At least 3 times a week, I had sarku for lunch. It's a Japanese food place that's basically white rice with brown rice, lo mein with either chicken, beef, shrimp, or some combination. I always got white rice with chicken/beef and slathered it with soy sauce. It's important to note that they were super ducking cheap about their soy sauce. They never put out more than 10 or so packets for a huge line of customers. I used about 5 to 6 packets per lunch, which means that by the time I got to the soy sauce bin, it was limited. Every time I went, I'd take as many packets as I possibly could. Packet growth exceeded use. You can see where this is going. I kept all my soy sauce packets in a drawer with those plastic tooth flossers with the sharp, pointy end for toothpicking. Now you can really see where this is going. The sludge pile in that drawer was absolute madness. It was about 50 packets of soy sauce, a quarter of which were punctured by the flossers. Had I felt secure in my position with the organization, I would have cleaned it. Since job security was lacking, I did not. 3 months after I was fired and working for a new company, I got a text from a coworker I left on good terms with. The text was, "They found all your soy sauce." Story 26. I was working as a shift leader at Dunkin' Donuts when I was 19 to 20 years old. Now the thing with being a shift leader is it requires CBL training in order to get the pay raise associated with it. My manager always had an excuse for keeping me from the CBL training, so I was basically doing the extra work but not being paid for it. Eventually, I got fed up and took my revenge by giving every single customer the senior discount. Now, I'd already been doing this out of laziness for some customers. The senior discount on a medium coffee will make it an even $2, so I wouldn't have to make change. But once I realized I was never going to get my due, I applied it to all orders. This went on for months before I was caught, and one of the GMs, who really didn't give a crap, said that I had cost the company something to the tune of $75 a day average for each day that I did this. They lost at least $2,000 in revenue and tried unsuccessfully to involve the police. Story 27. 2 jobs ago, I was working for a large pharma company, decent job overall, but the typical corporate B, so they had a big layoff planned and were doing a crafty job of keeping it quiet. HR has a big meeting with a PowerPoint. One of the action items was contact it and see how many badges can be deactivated between midnight and 5 a.m. This site was huge. You had to badge in just to get through the gate to go into the parking garages. HR's brilliant plan would force people to drive to work, have their badge fail to open the gate, while cars piled up behind them. The idea was then that the security guard would have them turn around somehow and go to the visitor's gate, where a box of their personal effects would be waiting. Well, someone from HR accidentally posted the PowerPoint to the site-wide intranet, where it stayed up for an hour. By the end of the day, all 7,000 people on site had seen it, and the plan was changed. Story 28. I worked at Wendy's for a year or so in high school. One of my coworkers was there for a little over 3 years. He got fired over a yelling match with the general manager of the store. The last thing the general manager said to the guy was, "Bring back your uniform, or I will take the cost out of your last paycheck." A few days later, while I was working my normal night shift, he came in with his uniform in a box with the general manager's name on it. We looked inside later and everything was burnt to a crisp, except for the button on the top of the pile of burnt crap. Story 29. I was a bar manager a while back. There was a young guy I hired with no real experience, so he started as a barback, the ice Karen. Within a week, I could tell that it was not the job for him. He was in college and a smart dude, had a decent work ethic, but he hated the customer service. Every night, he complained about customers. I really liked him, but I was getting close to firing him. Then, one busy night, he just had enough. Some young girl was and complaining to him that her drink was weak. He didn't make the drink, I did. And she just went on and on about wanting us to add more vodka. The Karen hadn't even tipped. Finally, he loses it and looks her in the eye and says, "Duck you, duck this job, and duck this crap, music." He walked up to me, said sorry, and walked out. Kinda made my night hard, being a man down, but I have mad respect for that. Sometimes you need to protect yourself. He came in for his final paycheck like a week later. He apologized a bunch, and I never saw him again. Story 30. I was working a fast food job. It was my second job at the time, as in I was actively working 2 jobs. I had been with this job about a month and was not completely trained for whatever reason, so I was already irritated with not being trained correctly. I was working fryers, and a manager yelled at me, asking why I wasn't helping by making drinks. I told her I didn't know how. I was then berated for not knowing this, loudly, while extremely busy during lunch rush. I simply said, "I need to go to the bathroom." I went to the bathroom, then right directly out the side door. I do not like being yelled at for things that I don't have control over. I've actually walked out twice. Once was a department store. I was a salesperson. I was already leaving. I had my 2 weeks in and another job lined up. I can't exactly remember what happened to make me so angry, but I remember thinking, duck this place. I went to my manager, asked to go to lunch, clocked out. Once in my car, I called the place that I was lined up to work at and said, "It seems like they don't need me to finish my 2 weeks. Can I start tomorrow?" I left. About an hour later, I got a text from the HR person asking where I was. I'm fairly reliable, so I do believe she was probably worried. I informed her that it appeared that they had my position filled and I was not needed, not the blaze of glory that others have posted. I'm not exactly proud of walking out. I just really don't like bad management. Story 31. There was a line cook at a small restaurant I served at. He was a really nice guy, but had a short temper. One busy Friday night, the chef and the line cook got into an altercation over something probably pretty stupid. The chef ended up telling the line cook that he was his Karen, and the cook lost it. I think he got in one punch. I wasn't in the kitchen at this point. He then pushed all the plates ready to go out onto the floor. He went to the server alley, ripped the pose system out of the wall, threw it through the kitchen door, then proceeded to the dining room yelling, "The chef here is an abuser." Then he left. The manager called the police, but decided not to press any charges. The cook was rehired about 2 months later. Story 32. New receptionist lasted about 15 minutes. She was well dressed at all of her interviews, then showed up at her first day of work with blue hair and a t-shirt, clearly against dress code, especially for the receptionist. The owner of the company was one of the first people off the elevator that morning. He said, "Who are you?" She introduced herself and said, "I'm your new receptionist." He said, "Not anymore, you're not. You're fired, leave now." I'm not sure if she just didn't read the dress code or didn't think that sort of change in appearance was something she should ask about before doing. But yeah, she lasted all of about 15 minutes. I saw another employee fired because he didn't show up to work on his first day. He said, "I thought I was supposed to start next week." He didn't show up the second day, and his excuse was, "It's a holiday. I assumed we were closed." It was some sort of obscure minor holiday, but not one we were closed for. Bad timing because being a new hire, his boss had just gone through the interview process with several candidates, so he fired the guy and hired his second choice. Story 33. I guess this doesn't count since I didn't technically watch this happen, but I've punched my boss after she slapped me, got us both arrested, no self-defense law, and both fired for it. Apparently I broke her jaw. Who knows? It's how the story goes anyway. Story 34. I'm pretty proud of myself for the way I quit my last 2 jobs. One of them was a security gig and they ducked me from the beginning. I had 60 hours of training for a grocery warehouse, never got a login for the computer, a badge to the building, or the security codes to the alarm system. One of my coworkers was this old guy who told me that it was too dangerous of a site because supposedly all the truckers dropping off deliveries were going to abuse me. After 2 weeks, I couldn't stand it, threw my uniform in a trash bag, wrote a scathing resignation letter about how this was the most poorly managed business I'd ever seen, then loudly announced I was quitting in the lobby while another person was applying. My last job, I was burnt out. It was a doctor's office where no one actually cared about the patients. They just wanted the paycheck and to make themselves look good. The organization was using money donated for cancer research and new equipment for administrative costs. I had been on the wait list for my current job and got a call at 8:30 Monday morning that a position opened up. I told everyone I had to go and left. Went back later that night after the shift and my new job and quit without notice. Packed up all my stuff right then and there and never looked back. 3 of my current coworkers left the same job as me for the same reason. I warn everyone to stay far, far away from Dartmouth Hitchcock. Story 35. Coworker in front of me cannot open the door as his badge was not working properly. I swipe and let him in as I know he works there. Security guard screams at me and says, "Why did you let him in? His badge is not active." I apologize, and the coworker says, "Yeah, my badge was not working." Security guard, "That's because it was deactivated. The system says yesterday was your last day. Didn't they tell you?" My jaw dropped, and my now ex-coworker almost cried out of shock/embarrassment. Story 36. When I was a kid, I played soccer. We had that one kind of important game, and I was goalkeeper. I ducked up, slipped, it was raining a bit, and did not catch a free kick right in the beginning of the match. Parent of an offense player flipped his crap properly, so 8-year-old me stared at him in front of everyone. And when he finally made a pause, I yelled as loud as I could, something along those lines, "How about you do it better then?" Threw my gloves at his face, jumped on my bike, and ducked off into the sunset. I never returned. To this day, I wonder what happened after I left the scene. Story 37. Had a coworker who was warned time and time again to stop being late to work. Boss told him one more time, and he would have to let him go. Proceeds to show up 2 hours late the very next day and acts like nothing is wrong. Boss says, "What are you doing here?" And the guy says, "I'm here to work." Boss says, "You no longer work here. We had this talk yesterday." Guy starts crying as if he never saw this coming and it was news to him. Calls his girlfriend to come right back to the store and pick him up because he was fired. Watched her carrying him out in the parking lot because he hadn't told her that he had been late to work even once. He was a filthy addict who barely ever worked when he did bother to show up, so it wasn't like he was missed. She ended the relationship the next day, came back in to get his last check, and begged for his job back, saying that he didn't think my boss was serious. Story 38. Worked at a Taco Bell in college. I hated it. I was interviewing for a bunch of different jobs and landed one in my college's student union, a really cushy technology lab job where I was basically on Facebook and Netflix all day. I took the call in the back by the kitchen in the middle of prep. I told the lady I accepted. Pay was also like $5 per hour more. Hung up. My coworker asked if I was good. I was silent, in shock sorta, as the day had been crap before it and I felt like God handed me this gift. I told him I'm fine and that he can finish the prep. Took off my apron, walked right out of the restaurant. I felt terrible about doing that though. My manager called me 50 times. I ignored each call. I took off the polo they give and left it in the parking lot. I can't believe, looking back as a 27-year-old, how unprofessional I acted, but damn if I didn't feel amazing after. Story 39. Found out on Thursday that Friday would be the last day for me and my entire team as the government had not renewed our contract. It and project management found out last minute, immediately told everyone the situation, and to come back on Friday for pizza and a resume writing review party. We brought up everyone's resumes on the projector, updated and critiqued everyone's. We all wrote each other multiple letters of recommendation and gave each other tips and agreed to recommend each other as soon as we found new jobs. Most people were working again the next week at other companies with equal or better pay. Story 40. A friend was a supervisor at a box corrugating factory. His entire plant was brought upstairs for a meeting. The administration people started listing things that needed to improve, mainly productivity. They complained that people were taking too many bathroom breaks, weren't working fast enough, etc. My friend, being a supervisor, was in a tough spot. He tried his best to do what corporate told him, but they had become a real pain in his ass. He had worked most of the machines in the plant and had 30 years experience. He stood up in the middle of the meeting and told them they were being unreasonable. They immediately shut him down and told him he could either enact the new policies or turn in his resignation. What they didn't know was that he actually had a fully written resignation in his jacket. He walked over and handed in his letter. As you can imagine, all hell broke loose. They quickly tried to smooth things over, but my friend picked up his stuff, thanked them, and walked off. 2 more guys walked out behind him, and the meeting was quickly adjourned. A few weeks later, my friend was hired at a new place, and he quickly went about poaching any good worker he could from his old place. Story 41. Worked as a debt collector over the phone for an energy company. The rate at which debt was being recovered was decided to be resolved by hiring a big shot, Wolf of Wall Street type, to oversee the running of the office. One day out of the blue, the CAD, like the FBI only in Britain, turn up en masse and arrest the guy in the middle of the working day. He put up a bit of a fight, but was dragged out in cuffs. Never found out why this happened. Story 42. This guy I used to work with brought a big-ass stereo to work the day he quit, plugged it in, and blasted the song "Take This Job and Shove It" on replay before doing donuts in the parking lot with his truck and driving away. Story 43. As a teenager, I worked at a fast food place and had been fed up for quite some time with our crappy intercom system. We were supposed to take the order, then speak it into the mic, this was the early 90s, so the people in the back could prep it. Our intercom was spotty at best, and I had already had enough rude customers for the day to push me over the edge. I spoke the order into the mic, then heard my manager yell from the back, "What? I can't hear you." I tried one more time with the same results. I then walked back to tell him the order in person. He yelled at me for leaving my register. That did it. I walked back to the register, grabbed the mic, and screamed the order as loudly as I could. The poor customer's face went completely white, and he backed away a few steps. I stood there knowing I just ducked up royally, calmly took off my apron, name badge, and oh-so-attractive visor, then clocked out and left the store. Never returned. I don't even remember if they mailed me my last paycheck. Story 44. Crap, I have one I did. Worked at a call center. I'd already gotten a new job, not in a call center, and was just doing the 2 weeks notice, courtesy. About 2 days before my last day, I get a call from a woman screaming at me because her TV and internet don't work. Finally, calm her down and get her to do some troubleshooting, and the next step, roll a truck. Crap, it's a Thursday. She won't be getting a truck roll until the next Tuesday. I tell her this, and she flips crap again. Her, my kids are home for the summer. WTF, are we supposed to do without TV or internet? Me, well, you could go to the park and spend time with your kids outside the house. I don't know, but we can't get a crew out there until Tuesday afternoon. Her, are you telling me how to raise my effing kids? How dare you? I want to talk to your supervisor. This is bullcrap. Me, all right, ma'am, please hold. Hung up the phone, logged out and said, duck that lady and duck this job. I'm out of here. Turned in my badge to HR and went home to finish packing my things for my new out-of-state job.